If your kid can't do this with a battle rope, they're probably not going to hit as many of these as they would like to, because in order to crack the rope like that, like you just saw me do, what has to happen is the muscles in your core need to know how to fire quickly and accelerate and then quickly stop on a dime and send that energy forward. And that's the exact same thing that has to happen in a kid's body for a barrel to whip through the zone with maximum bat speed. But what we've noticed is that most kids physically don't have the ability to do this yet because one of 3 very important slings in their body is not working correctly yet. Now, these are called fascial slings, and they basically act like rubber bands that run from one side of your body to the other. And in the swing, they have to stretch and then snap in the right order for the barrel to whip through the zone at a kid's full potential. Now, your kid might not have a problem with all 3 of these slings. There's probably only 1 or 2 that are jacked up, but you won't really know which ones are causing your kid's problems unless you actually test them for all 3. So I'm going to show you how to test for all 3, and if your kid fails any of those tests, I'm also going to show you exactly where you can start so you can start to fix that problem. And the first sling we need to test is the anterior oblique swing. And this one runs from one side of your core across to the opposite hip. So think of it like an X across your stomach. So its job in a swing is to take all of that hip and leg energy from the bottom half of your body and transfer it into the upper body so they can turn it into bat speed. And when this sling is weak, you tend to see kids with arm dominant swings who don't fire their hips as well as they could. And when we see this in a kid, one of the tests we like to run is the Copenhagen plank test, where it's basically a side plank where the top foot is resting on a bench and the bottom foot is being held under the bottom side of the bench. And the kids have to be able to hold this position for 20 seconds on each side. And as you can see here, my youngest daughter cannot do it, which is a big part of why when you watch her swing, she's got all of this slack when she swings, where her hips are really going in reverse in like a really big way. So when we see this, we have a whole progression of exercises we like to use to build up these slings, starting with this Copenhagen test. And for this sling, what we like to be able to have the kids do is start from a planking position on their elbows. And if they take one hand and place it on the opposite side shoulder, can they explode up with one arm and do a one-arm push-up to a high plank position? Because if we can, now we got a kid who's pretty explosive in this pattern. And when you can take a kid from a kid like this into a kid who can do this, you start to end up having enough physical ability to be able to throw balls like she can 72 miles an hour and starts jacking balls out all over the yard, even though she's undersized. Then there's the lateral fascial sling. And this one is basically the outside of your hip working with your inner thigh on the same leg. And its job is to keep your pelvis level when you're standing on one leg, which is kind of exactly what the swing has to do, right? But when it's weak, you'll tend to see the front knee bend as a hitter makes contact, or you'll see that their hips will continue to drift sideways after their front foot gets into the ground. So one simple way to test if this sling is weak in your kid is to have them do a weighted squat. You want to pick a weight that's appropriate for their age, but what you want to watch for is as they squat, do you see if one of their knees turns in? Because if it does, that should set off a couple of alarm bells that her lateral sling is not strong enough. Now, when we see stuff like this, we have a whole bunch of different exercises that are super fun for kids like you see here, but we can't start on those until we teach the kids how to actually turn on a couple of different muscles individually first. And for us, we like to start with banded squats, where you put a band around their knees and have the kids push out against it as they squat to fight against that tendency to cave the knee in as they're squatting. But because the way to get this to transfer to sports is to make sure we're training multiple muscles at the same time, not just one, especially if you've got younger kids or groups of kids that are the same age, is a game we call the single leg PVC tug of war, where each kid stands on one leg holding a PVC pipe, and the goal is to knock the other person over and off balance while they stay on one leg. And what ends up happening here is they're forced to use that lateral sling while reacting to something unpredictable, which fires that thing and makes it all stable. And whenever I can turn an exercise that's going to develop the kid into something the kid doesn't even realize is developing them, that's a win-win for me. Which brings us to the third sling, which is the most important one for actually getting that rope to crack like I talked about earlier. And this one's called the posterior oblique sling. And this one runs from your back down to your butt on the opposite sides, but down the back of your body, right? And its job in a swing does something super important that most people don't understand. It helps the body decelerate. And this visual is one of the best I've ever seen to explain why this matters. Because while most people think hitting for power is about how fast you can get things going and how fast you can accelerate and how fast you can move forward, it's just as important to know how fast you can stop each of those parts of your body so that the parts above them can accelerate like this demonstration shows. Because when you can stop and start all these segments fast enough and in the right order, that's when you get a ton of whip like you see with that battle rope that I did earlier. But if this sling is weak in a kid, what you will instead see is you will see when they're swinging that their back foot will release and slide towards home plate versus sliding back underneath their body going away from home plate, which is actually what we want. And one of our favorite exercises for attacking this is to hang an exercise ring of some sort from a bar while the athlete holds on with one hand and then stomp the opposite foot into the ground while they do a one-arm row to pick their body off the ground. And the reason this works is because when you get into that position, it's targeting that exact oblique sling that goes from the lat on one side to the glute on the other. It's working in that diagonal pattern, and it's lighting up all of those muscles and tissues involved in that chain. And what we typically see when we have a kid who comes to work with us, when we're measuring how well they accelerate their bat with a bat sensor, and we see that they're generating low rotational acceleration scores because one of these slings is off, is that when we correctly identify which sling it is and we put them into exercises that target that sling, their acceleration scores nearly double or triple over a 6 to 8 week period because they can actually now move their body the way it needs to be able to move in order to be a good rotational athlete. And I should stop right here. I can say that because we actually track this stuff. This is an internal tracker with an athlete, for example, where you see that rotational acceleration score started at a 6.3 when we were measuring how quickly their barrel accelerated, and they've tracked all of their sessions with us, and now they're generating scores in the 14.1 range in their last session. So we really do get kids to rotate better when we do this kind of stuff. Now, some of you are going to run these tests, start the exercises, and your kids are going to improve fast. But others are going to do everything I just said, and nothing's going to change. And when that happens, it's almost always for the same reason. Because these slings can't do their job if your kid's body doesn't have enough stability to control these movements. So you can run these drills and kind of get better at them, but they're never going to transfer to the swing if your kid's lacking stability in other areas of their body. So we made a video over here that walks you through the 3 most important stability tests your kid needs to be able to pass before these slings will really work for you and transfer into your kid's swing. And you can watch exactly how to do those tests right here.